And we are live. Hi there. I'm Dr. Christine Anderson and
I'm Dr. Toxil Ruck. Apologies for the late delay, but tech issues, as you know, often go with these live things. So we are here and we are so happy that you are here with us today as well.
And welcome to your baby's brilliant brain. We are here to help educate you on how to optimize your baby's brain development from conception through the first few years of life and, of course, beyond. And today, I really am so excited about this broadcast today. First of all, because it's our first live broadcast. And our guest today is Dr. Carlos Ritter, and he has so much information. We are hearing so much about EMFs and 5G, and there's a lot of buzz around all this. But I know for me, I'm still learning. There is so much information that we don't know. And then what do we do with all this information, right? Okay, it's one thing to find out it's a problem, but come on, technology isn't going away. Look what we're doing today. We're here coming to you via computer, which is so great and exciting, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves as much as possible so that we can keep ourselves healthy and, of course, our children. So, Dr. Toxil, do you want to introduce Dr. Ritter?
Yeah, so we are here today with Dr. Carlos Ritter. He is the CEO of EMF Knights. And so we're actually going to provide information for you down below. So that way, if you have further questions at the end of this for Dr. Ritter, you have a way to contact him. But as for now, thank you so much for coming on our podcast, Your Baby's Brilliant Brain, to talk to us about this really, really, really important issue.
Well,
so
thank you so much for inviting me.
We're super excited to have you. And especially me, I actually don't know a lot about EMF technology other than what I've heard from various other people. They're either making fun of the idea that EMFs, especially 5G, could be harmful, or they're of the idea that EMFs and 5G are going to be a big problem. So I'm so glad that we have you today because you are so well versed in this. I believe you are a pediatrician and you have certain degrees in neurology as well,
yeah. I have 3 medical specialties. My first specialty is I'm a pediatrician. I got fascinated with the brain, so I applied and I got to the residency of pediatric neurologist. And after that, I finished pediatric neurology, I studied sleep medicine. So I have 3 medical specialties in the biological side.
Yeah, you're like me. You go down a rabbit hole, you have a little bit of information or you're finding a need for your patients. And then before you know it, you have, so many specialties and letters after your name. And it's just a never ending thing because the more you don't know, and then you have to keep learning. Yeah. So
that's right.
That's why I wanted you on here, because I know you've been doing a lot of research with this. This is not just stuff you're making up or hearsay. You've done so much work in this area, and I know we're going to learn so much from you. And also for our listeners and people out here joining us, if you have a question, you can type it in the chat, and then we'll do what we can to get that question to Dr. Ritter if it's not been answered. And this way, it's a group effort for making sure that the people out there are getting the information they want to hear. So the first thing is really how you got into all of this. I know a little bit of your backstory, but I'd love for you to fill people in on how you arrived at the place that you are now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I got here as a normal doctor, practicing medicine like any other medical doctors around the world. So like I was saying, I graduated as a medical doctor and I had the opportunity to be a resident in pediatric. Back in those days, I believe everything that I was being fed from the medical field. I was a proud pediatrician, but I started studying a little bit more. And that's when my brain started, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. The more that you know, the less logic, the superficial answers make sense. So being a pediatric neurologist is exactly what brought me here. When I graduated and I started practicing in my private practice, I started accumulating a lot of patients with epilepsy and autism. For some reason, those were the main patients that went into my office. And I was fascinated with the electric system of the brain. So I didn't study a subspecialty in neurophysiology, but I was fascinated with electroencephalograms. Electroencephalograms are the study that shows you the electric part of the brain. So I kind of got deep in that area, and that is when we start seeing, hey, wait a second, every single one of the chronic patients we have, and not just mine, not just neurological patients, but every single chronic patient has something in common. It has disturbance in the electric system of the brain, and it has sleeping problems, diverse sleeping disorders. Back in those days, we didn't understand a lot. We didn't understand even why we sleep. Today, we can answer that question really easy. We sleep because we need to restore. Because if we can see inside of the cells, inside we have DNA, we have enzymes, we have lipids, a lot of structures, but they were out as any other thing in this universe. Luckily for humans, we sleep, and that activates a lot of different biochemical pathways to restore, to repair broken pieces inside of our body. At the end of the day, when we wake up in the morning, we need to feel amazing. We go through the day and we start getting tired. If we measure how many enzymes and DNA is broken inside of the cells, we're going to accumulate some. But we're going to go to bed and we're going to repair those. So at the next day, we have a functional cell. That's the summary. At the end of the day, accumulating a lot of broken pieces will lead us to chronic illnesses. So neurology, sleep medicine start teaching me something that we didn't know before. And going deeper, a little bit deeper in all these rabbit holes, like you said, we start discovering, hey, there's gotta be a toxin that it doesn't act like a chemical toxin, like the normal toxins that we know that they teach us in med school, etc. This one actually acts as an electric toxin, interfering with the electric system of the brain. Going a little bit deeper, of course, I'm a neurologist, so I was focusing on the brain, but I started opening a little bit more, and I saw the cardiological patients. At the end of the day, three main organs work with electricity. We can say that electricity is the first step to activation of biochemical pathways. One is the brain. Neurons communicate with electric impulses. The heart, we have a natural pacemaker, and that is how we pump blood. In the immune system gets activated with gated voltage channels. At the end of the day, we start seeing that all these three organs were suffering more and differently than the experiences that we had in the past.
Hang on, Dr. Carlos.
Yeah.
Now, people are probably going to understand brain and neurons. Those
Okay,
are the cells in the brain, right? And the electrical activity of the heart. This is that, bump, the AV node. It tells your brain, your heart to pump, bump. And then the next one goes down the ventricle and bump, right?
Yeah.
So we have the brain telling the heart to pump. Now, you said something about gated voltage channels. Now, that may be a new term. So let's maybe back up a second there.
Let me say that the human body is so amazing that the whole unit is composed with a lot of different parts. So one of those ones, receptors we have in each cell, are very specific. They work in one specific area and they trigger so many biochemical cascades, etc.
Sort of like a lock and key, just to sort of simplify it. I know that it's not as simple, but
at the end of the
you
day,
have kind of a key going in a lock that turns it, and that
it triggers a new path. Yeah. It is extremely more complex than that, but that is a good analogy. So yeah, going deeper and deeper and deeper, we start seeing that now we have more chronic illnesses attacking these three organs: the brain, whether it's mental issues or neurological issues, learning disabilities, anxiety, or cardiovascular problems, high blood pressure, cardiac arrhythmias, or immunological problems, whether it's low immune or whether it's a high hyperactive autoimmune disease. So we're talking about like 15, 20 years ago when things start to shifting, and I had to go a little bit deeper in all these specific receptors and things like that. All of them at the end of the day pointed that there was a toxin acting as an electric toxin. Back in those days, we didn't understand, is it in the water? Is it in the soil? Is it in the air? Is it what we eat? Because I was just a biologist, being a medical doctor, you're in the area of biology. I didn't understand any of the laws ruling electricity. So let me tell you really quick. I quit in one point of my life practicing medicine and tried to merge now the world of physics. So went to college again, and I studied 4 years of physics, specifically quantum mechanics, particle physics, and heliophysics. And the reason why I did that is because I needed to understand these electric laws. Coulomb's laws, it's a new name, but it's a law in physics that rules how electric fields behave between each other. At the end of the day, it was very important for me as a medical doctor to understand, is it my enemy an electric toxin? And if it is, how? And where it's coming from? How it gets into my patients? And what can I do in order to prevent more exposure of my patients to these toxins? So that is my path. That is exactly how I did. It was a long journey, but right now it's a journey that is very rewarding because a lot of things that didn't make sense a few years ago, it makes sense now through the logic of how things get connected to each other.
Yeah, it is incredible, that you started this 20 years ago and started seeing it then, because I'm sure now if you were in practice, you would be seeing it way more, because I know I have. And I do spend a significant amount of time talking to my patients and educating them about toxins, including what's going on with EMFs.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could maybe have you really concisely sort of put a definition to things like EMF and what exactly is it?
Okay.
What are we talking about, so that we can sort of put this in context instead of this just intangible thing out there?
Exactly. It is, at the end of the day, when we require electricity, this electricity has to be transported through a cable. So we have wires in our houses. We have power lines that goes from power stations or power plants to power stations to your house. Every cable that carries a current, electricity inside, will produce an electric and magnetic fields around. If we as humans are in close proximity to these cables, we will absorb that field. That explains one part of EMFs. So anytime that we're close to a cable with electricity, that cable will have an electric and magnetic field. The closer that we get, the more absorption that we can get from that invisible field. Now there's other ones. These ones, we tend to classify them as a low frequencies electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic field is not just one thing, but is now I have to subdivide it to understand how they behave. How come I can say that EMFs is this, but at the same time I can say that EMFs is that? Now let me explain the second one. Every time, now we use wireless technology for a lot of things. I mean, it's convenient. Unluckily for us, it has one side effect. But if we have one device, and I'm going to put my finger kind of like this, imagine that this is an antenna. This antenna is broadcasting a signal. Again, these signals are invisible. If I ask somebody, hey, could you see signals from Wi-Fi? No, I can't. It doesn't mean that we don't have Wi-Fi. We can prove it because we can just connect our phones or computers to Wi-Fi, but we don't see waves going through. That means that one antenna is sending a signal, and it's sending the signal to everywhere, 360 degrees from that antenna. But that antenna is an antenna needs a receptor, a second antenna. So imagine cell phone antenna, this one, and cell phone. So they communicate to each other, and the problem is that we're in between. My first question when I was trying to understand this is, it's invisible, so maybe it's not there. No, it is there because I can measure it and because I can use it. Now, we are sharing the air with those antennas. At the end of the day, they will travel probably like 42 miles from antenna to antenna. Different from the first type of EMF that I said, electric cables, they don't go that far. Let me just say like this. Probably if these cables, let's imagine power lines, the big structure power lines, those ones, sometimes they carry 750,000 volts. It's a lot of power in there. The magnetic field that they produce, sometimes it goes beyond a mile. But, so whoever is a mile away from those things is receiving that field. But imagine that we have cables in our houses, and those ones just carry 120 volts. Here in the States, we use electricity at 120 volts. So the radius of that field is shorter, but it's closer to our houses. So if you see, the two main differences between EMFs is low frequencies, close to the cable and just from the cable, and the other one, high frequencies from antenna to antenna. Those are the two main ones. Then we have a subdivision, but I don't want to talk about that subdivision right now, so I don't confuse more.
Well, and I had a question too, because one thing I've heard is everyone goes, well, the Earth has an electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
That's how it protects us from the sun. So how can an electrical, how can that be bad for us then? How is it any different from what the Earth generates for us in order to protect us from those solar rays?
Perfect.
And all of that? So
details are very important in this area. And to explain this, I'm going to try to do it fast, but I have to go and get so many variables again. The Earth actually sustains life. This Earth is made to sustain life. So we have some enemies through this air, things that will deprive life if we don't have protection. Cosmic rays. Let me just say this really quick. I hope that I don't lose anybody. But when we talk about electromagnetic spectrum, we have to divide it first in two main things. One of them is nuclear radiation. Everybody knows what nuclear radiation, because we have nuclear plants, because we have some accidents in the past, Chernobyl, Fukushima. So nuclear radiation is radiation that is extremely powerful. Well, it turns out that we live in this universe and we have cosmic rays. Those cosmic rays, the sun as well, not just the sun, but cosmic rays as well, will be extremely harmful for the earth, for the humans, that the earth would be deprived unless we have one shield against that. Whatever we have, and this is a paper that it just came like 5 years ago, we thought in the past that the core of the earth, it was iron. Well, one brilliant physicist from Texas, you're in California, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This brilliant physicist is from Texas. I'm in Texas too. So he said, no, it's impossible that we have iron in the core of the earth. We have to have a geonuclear reactor. That makes sense because the earth is extremely old and we still have that magnetic field. The earth's magnetic field, and it's potent, is extremely powerful. Well, it turns out that it goes from the core of the earth all the way to the crest, but it's being filtrated. At the end of the day, the main purpose of our magnetic field is to create a shield around the earth that is called Van Allen rings. These Van Allen rings traps radiation. At the end of the day, the way that they go through the crest where we are standing is every 2.4 meters, we have a 10 centimeters. I'm sorry that I'm using metric units, but that's the way it is in physics. So 10 centimeters is what the magnetic field is. And yeah, kind of like that. And it's separate every 2.4 meters. A lot more bigger. So at the end of the day, we're exposed. We shouldn't be exposed to a lot of magnetic fields, but we're not exposed 100% of whatever we're stepped in. The earth is extremely smart that if you step in one of those lines, you will receive a magnetic field. But if you step outside of that line, you will give to the earth that capacitation that you just get. So the earth has a magnetic field, but at the same time has the remedy for you not to get so sick. It is a little bit more complicated than that, but I guess that the earth
So what I'm hearing is that there, like everything else, it seems with life, there's homeostasis and balance.
Yes,
the earth gives off a magnetic field, but it's also receiving. So it's almost like, this is why we talk about the grounding effect of our feet in the earth. It's drawing that energy back down into the earth.
Exactly. Now, we as humans, we're every electric and magnetic field is going to interfere with our electric systems. But the earth, again, it was so smart that the earth has their own magnetic field, and that's it. There was no room for more. Now humans, we start messing up with things and we're creating man-made electromagnetic fields. So at the end of the day, our threshold is not that high. When we surpass that threshold is when we start seeing disturbances. So at the end of the day, yes, we do have a magnetic field in the earth. It's protecting us. It's not as good, but the earth as well protects us from that that same magnetic field. But whatever we're doing is putting man-made electromagnetic fields in a amount that is beyond my well, beyond the numbers that everybody understands.
Beyond numbers that you're comfortable with us being
Yeah.
exposed to.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and that brings me to, because again, there's these different sides. And so, but it hasn't been 5G. We had 4G for a while. That's why I'm like, I'm not really understanding, like, so 5G, how much more magnetic, or how much more of that, what would you call it, current or magnetic field?
No, they're powerful.
Exposed to versus what we had been exposed to, I think, for the last, they were doing 4G or 3G.
It's an evolution. It was 3G, then it went to 4G, now it's 5G.
So why now, with it becoming 5G, is this becoming more and more talked about, and more people are kind of wary of it, I would say, in a sense, versus, I didn't hear anything about 3G or 4G. Nobody seemed to have a problem with it. So what's the problem with 5G?
Let me try to give an analogy, and now I'm going to use nuclear radiation. In nuclear radiation, we're going to call it ionizing radiation. And this technology...
And just for our listeners out there, ionizing radiation would be like X-rays.
Yes,
type of radiation. Yeah.
And in non-ionizing radiation, it's all these communications that we have. So let me give one example. At the end of the day, again, everybody knows what a nuclear reactor is. If me as a human, I get inside of a nuclear reactor right now, they don't allow me to go there because they know that it's extremely terrible, so they don't allow you to go there. But let's suppose that I can get in there. If I step inside of a nuclear reactor and I stay there for 10 minutes, I'm going to die. I'm not going to die right away. Probably I'm going to die a year from now. And I'm going to die having malfunction in every single one of my organs because radiation is going through everywhere in my body. Probably I'm going to have depletion of my red cells, my white cells in the blood. I'm going to have liver dysfunction, kidney dysfunction. And maybe at the end of the day, I'm going to die from cancer because DNA is being destroyed and mutations are happening. But at the end of the day, 10 minutes of exposure of extremely powerful radiation will kill me.
Just not right away.
Just not right away. I'm going to see the effects right away, probably the first 3 hours, 3 days top, but I'm not going to die right away. Now, this is because the nuclear power is extremely high, is one of the most powerful. Gamma rays is one of the most powerful that we see. Every particle carries a huge amount, I'm going to say a word, electron volts. This is how we measure energy. So it is the one that has the most electron volts, the most energy harmful for us. Now, if we compare this to 5G, 3G, etc., it's almost exactly the same, except that it needs a long period of time to do the exact same amount of damage. Maybe 10 minutes in a nuclear reactor, it would be the equivalent. It's not exactly like that, so but it's just for example. 30 years of exposure of electromagnetic fields from power lines and high frequencies. If you see, it's almost the same, but I need more exposure to get the same results than the one that carries more energy. The definition that we have of ionization and non-ionizing is the biological effect that it can do once that it goes through our biological being. One particle goes through my body, and one of them is going to ionize it right away, when the other one is going to take 20 years to ionize it. But at the end of the day, they do exactly the same harm. Now, what is the difference between 2G, 3G? Well, it's frequency of the waves. And if I can explain, let's suppose, what is frequency? Because this is one question that everybody asks, and everybody has different interpretations about that. Let's suppose that I have one electron in here. If I don't put any energy in this electron will stay put. It cannot move. It's impossible, but well, it's just for an example. But if I give to this electron extremely small amount of energy, it's going to move as a wave, but the wave is going to be really big. It's going to be as big as a mountain, probably. So it's going to have big crest and big valleys. This is because it has low amount of energy. But let's suppose that I recovered the same electron and now I apply more energy. So now it's going to have a smaller wave, carries more energy. So if it collides with my body, it's going to release more energy than the previous one. At the end of the day, the shorter the wavelength, this crest and valleys, the more energy it has. And 5G is a wave that measures millimeters versus the other ones that measure centimeters. Really big, the other one, like microwave ovens, 10 to 8 to 10, 12 centimeters versus one that measures millimeters. So at the end of the day, the cumulative effect makes it matters. But if we start having more waves that carries more energies, we're going to see an increase of the damage that we've been seeing before. And the last thing that I want to say in there is we as humans, we accumulate all the toxicity that we've been exposed to. One example, it could be, imagine that I was born and the first 8 years of my life, I was living in a house underneath power lines, the ones that I was describing. These big structures that carry 750,000 volts. Maybe I didn't get sick back in those days, but that's part of me now. That is my exposure. Now that I live with my wife in this house, we're exposed to the same things together, but my background and her background are different. So these, talking about electrotoxicity, the cumulative effect matters. And that is why we see people with different symptoms, people who actually get sick, and we can relate it to this, and people who doesn't, because our backgrounds and the experience that we have is completely different. If I can attach one more thing, this is my third specialty. It turns out that we sleep because we need to restore. So it's a balance. Imagine that I'm 100% right now, 100% okay. I start my day with 100% of my enzymes perfectly well, DNA, they're going to wear out. But luckily for me, I'm going to replace the broken pieces, and I'm going to start the next day with 100%. If I have that combination, then probably I'm not going to develop any chronic illnesses. But electromagnetic fields destroy the restoration pathways. That's how actually I got in here. If you remember, I said, the patients that I see, they have something in common. They don't sleep properly. I did, and I didn't prepare for this talk, but hopefully someday we can do more. But I accumulate a lot of tests, electroencephalograms, sleep studies. One thing that I did in my practice is every time that I have a new patient, I do the clinical history of the patient, explore, blah, blah, blah. and I took one electroencephalogram and one sleep study as just the very first sample that I have from those patients. And then I give one treatment, always one variable. I never try to do more than one variable, because if you give more variables, then you don't know what functioned and what didn't. So I always give one variable, and I measure again EEGs every 3 months and sleep studies every year. And it's fascinating to see. At the end of the day, the electric system gets interference with all the toxicity that we have around.
What were the age groups that you were seeing? Because I know you're seeing children. So
I'm a pediatrician. So with EEGs, I guess that in that part of my life, when I start practicing sleep medicine, I start seeing some adults too. Not as the doctor of the adults, but as the head of the department of polysomnography. So pretty much all my patients were kids. I don't know, between 2 years. You know what? I need to check exactly what is the age group that I have. I didn't have that many teenagers. It was always like around 2 to 13, I guess. I did see teenagers, but and then I start seeing adults, not as a doctor, but as the polysomnogram area, trying to understand the sleeping patterns. So
with your kids, and you were doing these EEGs before treating them, maybe just talk a little bit more about that, since our podcast is to educate parents of newborns and young children, and even the effects of what we do early on and what that affects later on. And maybe just speak to what you saw with these EEGs, some of the changes you made, and then some of the changes you saw in those electroencephalograms.
I think that I really need to show them. But at the beginning, now let me say, I want to answer this question with an analogy of me. When I was born, I'm 48 years old. So I was born in 1972. In 1972, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have a lot of technology. Probably I was just exposed to electric and magnetic fields from wires. That's it. At the end of the day, a newborn, a baby who is in the womb, it needs the right environment. Zero toxins, because toxins can prevent a good developing of the brain. The first years of a life, the first 15 years of a life, it need to be with almost zero exposure to toxins. Of course, now my main toxins are electromagnetic fields. So I guess that I gave my brain the opportunity to develop during the first years of my life, because I wasn't exposed to so many things. Comparing that with kids these days, whatever I see these days is that a mom that gets pregnant is already blasted. Let me tell you what I do right now, exactly what is my practice. So whatever I do is I measure houses. Because we were saying that electromagnetic fields are invisible, we have a problem. Who knows if you're exposed or not? You cannot just, hey, yeah, I'm exposed. No. So I developed a protocol to try to measure if you have exposure in your house. And I want to measure all types of radiation. Well, whatever I see right now is a huge exposure in everybody's house. Some has less exposure, some has more. But at the end of the day, as parents, I'm telling today the parents, you really need to go deep and try to learn these things. I know that you were saying, hey, somebody says this, somebody says that. But I guess I'm a parent. I have 3 kids. My responsibility as a parent is I need to be informed because I'm the one that protects them. If I believe that I'm protecting them, but at the end of the day, I'm wrong, I'm not protecting them. Even if I believe in the core, I'm doing the best. So my advice in here is listen to guys who go to med school and then physics school that knows what they're talking about, and dig deep in what are the toxins that can be exposed to your kids. Electromagnetic fields is one of the big ones. And whatever we don't want is to have a big amount of exposure into a little baby or a newborn or some teenager that is developing. Taking away some sources, it makes a little bit of a difference. And the example would be, I was saying before we started the podcast that all my computers are hardwired. My house, of course, I'm a freak about radiation, so I got this house and I shield the house perfectly well. I got this house, and let me say this story. I hope that I don't. It relates with some parents. When I first moved to Austin, I live in Austin, Texas. When I first moved here, I went with my realtor and I told her, "Hey, please don't hate me, but I have all these meters, and I'm gonna measure every house that you show me." She did hate me. Let me tell you, she did. So I ended measuring every house, and 2 weeks later, I ended in the outsides of Austin because there was less antennas, less cell phone antennas, less forms of exposure. I have one antenna 1.4 miles away from my house, but it was the only one. I have a green belt in the back of my house, so I have to worry about just one antenna. I shield my house, and I don't allow any wireless devices in here. It doesn't mean that I don't have technology. I have technology without exposing my kids. I was saying, I have internet. I have a faster internet because I hardwire everything so I can deliver perfectly well to each computer. My kids, they want cell phones. I don't allow them to use it that much, but there's one adapter where you can hook the cell phone into a hard wire. So they're doing Snapchat and all the things that teenagers do without being exposed. At the end of the day, whatever we have to do is we have to learn. The more that we learn, the more options we have, the best decisions we can do to protect our babies, to protect ourselves. And at the end of the day, having the less amount of exposure, almost zero exposure when we sleep, and the least amount of exposure when we're out there in the world. That would be the thing that I want to tell parents.
So how do you do that? How do you make
Okay.
your home your sanctuary and your the bedroom be as safe as possible? So, especially living in Los Angeles. Right. I mean, we don't have a green belt in our backyard, right?
I know.
So, of course, one option that people can do is to get away from the wireless internet and actually hook up. You are hooked up directly to your modem, if what I'm understanding, hardwiring. Correct?
That's right.
All right.
It's faster. You get more reliability on your devices, and you don't expose that much. Let me tell you what I did. At the end of the day, it's a game of numbers, and it's a game of kind of physics numbers. You have this exposure, so you have exposure to 10. Well, you need to protect to 12. So whatever you have to do is you have one thing that I do is I shield houses, and
what does
I
that
protect the wall.
Mean, Dr. Carlos? What do you mean you shield houses? I like picture a big blanket like over the
kind
house.
Of like that, but I use the walls. I put some particles in the walls. I don't like to call it.
What do you mean particles?
Not lead, right? You don't put lead in the walls.
Imagine that it's kind of paint.
Okay.
Let me tell you this. A lot of people will know. Did you know these airplanes from the military they're invisible to the radar. These are planes that can go to war zones and the radar doesn't know that they're there.
The stealth radar, the stealth planes or something like that.
Something like that. I don't know the name, but it turns out that those planes have particles. Carbon is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happens is that when the radar shoots a signal, the plane, instead of reflecting that signal back to the radar, absorbs it. So it just keeps it for himself. So the radar doesn't know that there's something in there. Kind of like the same thing. I put some particles like that, kind of like paint. I don't like to call it paint, but it would be the best analogy. And whatever I do is I mix cobalt, carbon, graphite, and depending of what is coming from the outside to the house, how strong are the wires inside of the wall, I can make a combination and I can defeat that electromagnetic field to get inside of the living space. So I use the walls. Right now I'm in my room, and let me tell you, sometimes you need more than one layer. Radiation sometimes is not as friendly to humans. So we have a lot. My walls. Yeah.
Is this something that you've made yourself, or is this something that people can like find and apply?
Yeah, no, it's a little bit more complicated. Yeah.
Just trying to help
now. Yeah, I know. Right now is kind of like not a do-it-yourself thing, for so many reasons. Because the first thing is, how do you know what is the radiation amount that you have, where it's coming from? Hopefully, one day, if you invite me again, I can show a report and I can show what we measure, and I give very specific information where it's coming from. The first thing that I gave is, do we have radiation in the house? Yes or no? Oh, well, yes. Okay. If the answer is yes, I need to know what type, where it's coming from, how powerful it is, latitude and longitude, where is exactly leaking into my house and where is ricocheting. How do I absorb it? I measure air pollution and human absorption. I want to know my kid, when he's sleeping in this room, in this bed, how much absorbs. Those are the things that are very important, because if I have that information, I can shield and I can prove this was before and this is after. That is the beauty about this, that is measurable. So I can measure it.
You're making up this proprietary sort of mixture of shielding specific to each house that you're measuring. And you do come out and do these analysis. You do travel and do that, correct?
Yeah. I went not long ago to Los Angeles, and I measured a few
out here. Either that, or I know too that you do train individuals to do what you do. So I really want to get my husband on board with,
that would be amazing,
picking your brain, because he is an electronics technician and we've had discussions and oh my gosh. But there is an interesting thing. I want to just run this by you. So before all this went down, actually, we were coming back. We actually got back from New Zealand about a week before the lockdown in LA.
Okay.
While I was in New Zealand, we were at a farmer's market, and I love crystals, which of course we're talking about energy and vibrations and what they can do. And so I know about Shungite. I don't know if you know about Shungite, but
I do.
It's very carbon based, and I bought a lot of it, and I have some of it near my bed and some near the computers, and some I can wear and some on the phone, and I actually bought Shungite powder. The guy who was selling it, he was telling me that they put it actually in paint and paint beehives.
Oh,
so that I guess it protects the beehives from EMFs.
they're
And
dying
the
because
bees will actually go in where the paint is and almost sort of like even collect it on their body. So I thought that was super interesting.
it is interesting. I've never heard.
Wow, this is really cool. I still have the powder sitting there. I don't know what I would do with it, but maybe we can use it in an alchemy form for our home in protection.
Yeah, Crystal, I love Crystal. I have to say, I love nature because I'm a scientist. I love nature now because now I understand how the earth sustains life. So whatever is some rocks, whatever they do is they absorb EMFs. Problem is that we have so many that they absorb only so much, right? They saturate it. But if you ground them, wet it in there, ground them, they discharge, and you can use them again.
Yeah, you have to clear them, clear the
You
energy.
have to clear them.
Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing. So I went and measured the office of one of my clients, and he has huge rocks in his office. So I was measuring, and my meters were nuts, everywhere, except when I got to the rocks were absorbing.
Yeah.
They saturate. But one thing that I did with another client is we ground permanently ground the rocks. So now it's grounded every second of the day.
See, I love learning about that. I'll have to ask you how you did that because
it is very interesting. So again, combination of different materials. Copper is an alloy. Copper and gold absorb a lot of these fields. So at the end of the day, whatever I do is I shield houses and I ground. What we call medical grade grounding system. It's a grounding system that absorbs way more fields. It has less resistance, ohms, and I attach it to the walls, and the walls are absorbing and reflecting radiation. 5 different properties. I hope that I don't confuse. Reflection.
No, I'm actually really interested in this. Obviously, absorbing, taking in, reflecting is bouncing off. So go ahead.
So reflection, polarization. Polarization means that when a wave goes through an object, it releases some of the energy, and I capture that energy and I send it to the ground. Refraction, refringence, and absorption. So I play with all these properties. I guess it is kind of like in anything in this world, medicine. Let's use the example. If I am a medical doctor and I have a new patient, I try to make my diagnosis. If I do a right diagnosis, maybe I'm going to give the right treatment. But if from the very beginning, I start with the wrong diagnosis, I'm going to mess up this whole thing.
Right.
So I've been developing.
You know what? This really begs the point that I'm trying to get across. Sometimes a little information can be dangerous.
Yes.
And this is why I haven't really done so much yet with remediation of our house. I've been thinking about it. I've been studying it. I've attended 5G summits.
Okay.
I've been listening to people like you. I've been talking to my husband. And the fact of the matter is that if you are just doing it sort of willy-nilly, you can actually increase and magnify that electromagnetic radiation in your home. Let's just say like you're shielding and you don't leave an outlet. It's just bouncing around and pinging off you.
It is. Exactly.
And with the metering, it's a little bit more complicated than just walking around the house with a meter. If you are maybe not measuring correctly, you may not think an area is a hot spot or a problem.
That's right.
And then you think you're okay. So
right. Let me tell you what is the first mistake. And this is why I'm trying to tell people physics is whatever rules in this area. I have a lot of meters. And of course, all the meters that I have are professional grade meters. I had to go to Europe just to learn how to use some of them. But the meters, at the end of the day, is not the thing that give me the whole entire result. I have to come back to my computer and run equations. Whatever I do is I measure, I try to have a variable that I can just grasp some information. So I measure a house. Even if I know that I'm going to shield only your room, I have to measure the whole entire house because I need to know exactly what happened in every single corner of that house. The second thing is I measure it with a variable, one time with electricity and one time with no electricity. In physics, if you can compare two different sets of measurements, you can start asking questions. Once that I have all this information, I come back to my house and I run equations. What is what Coulomb's law said about this? It's just an example. And let me say, Coulomb's law says how one electric field interact with another one. And I'm going to say it. Please don't get confused. Don't hate me for this. But Q1 times Q2 over 4 pi epsilon 0 1 over r squared. Well, it turns out that it's a law. It's a law that we cannot break. But it's a law that I use to understand how some waves behave to each other. Let me tell you another thing about the meters. Let's suppose that this is one of antennas. And I have one wave coming from this side, and these waves measure 5. When it reaches my meter, it's going to say in here 5, the number 5. Okay, so it's correct. It's measuring correctly. But what happens if I have 2 or more waves colliding? If I have one from this side and it measures 5, and another one from this side and measures 5, usually my meter is not gonna tell me 10, what it should tell me. It's gonna tell me 0. So they interfere with each other and they cancel. How I know if whatever I'm measuring with my meters is the right thing or is the effect of these waves canceling each other? So we have some equations for that. At the end of the day, the success of the measurements that I do is all the physics that I put in there, and trying to understand the reality. I do it in a way that now these calculations tells me where it's coming from, what type of antenna, and what frequencies are they emitting of. So at the end,
this specificity speaks to me because, and I think Dr. Toxil will agree. Same thing when we have patients come in. I'm nosy. I want to know everything. Even if they think it doesn't matter to what they're coming in with a headache, and I'm looking at their feet. Well, what the heck what do my feet have to do with my head?
Everything is connected.
Everything is connected. So this is why. Again, I wanted you to come on here because if we know that EMFs can affect our health, and we're going to start touching on that right now. We know they can affect our health, and we want to do something about it. We want to make sure, like you said, that we're doing the proper remediation. And now is the time to do this because we touched a little bit on this with the 4G. Now we're having the 5G. And I don't think I don't think they realize that the two are actually going together. When they put the towers up, there's a 4G and then there's 5Gs all around it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the 4G has a longer distance it can travel, and it can travel through objects, whereas the 5G can only travel a shorter distance because of that higher frequency. And it doesn't do such a good job of going through things, which is why they want to put them closer together. But now your 4G antenna that's maybe a mile away now is going to be much closer because it's going to be attached to those 5Gs. So we're going to be bombarded from the 4G and the 5G. One is going to be more continuous. One is more activated, seeking out like a thing like a cell phone. So it has that more pulsed effect, correct?
It could be.
Correct
It
me
could
if
be.
I'm
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, I know I'm probably simplifying this greatly.
No, but you're hitting the right things, and I wanted to just comment when you finish about one of the things.
Great. And so my point being that what used to be a mile away now is going to be coming closer, even for those people outlying. But in a city situation, the concentration isn't going to increase greatly. So we have got to make our homes be our sanctuaries. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to take some of these protective measures, at least in our sleeping environment.
Yeah.
And that way we have that chance of restoration, which I want to get back to for you, and especially in regards to babies. I want to talk about baby monitors.
I have a quick question.
But first, Dr. Toxil has a question.
Well, no, and then your explanation. So 4G can go pass through objects, and I know that has to do with the amount of energy. So can 5G pass through objects? And I guess this ties into what we're about to discuss. Why is 5G considered harmful?
Okay.
Or more and more considered
So
potentially harmful?
So yeah, that concept is the right concept, but it's because it releases energy. The more energy that you have, no, I shouldn't say it like that. So me as a human, I'm going to talk now as a biological body in between the path of these waves. So these waves, 4G, 3G, they're big waves, so they can go through you easily. I will polarize them. I will absorb some of the the energy that they have, but I will not absorb all the energy from them. The shorter the wave, the more energy that you have. So the energy that releases when it goes through this same body, it will be bigger. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep almost all the energy that they have. So that is how is more harmful for humans, because it touches my body and it releases way more energy. So I was talking with an engineer, and
essentially,
I was talking with an engineer, and he was telling me, "Oh yeah, I know that they have this problem," but he was saying, "Imagine that I have a 5G tower right there, and I have my phone in here. So there's a direct path between the cell phone and the tower. There's nothing in between."
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that we see, he says, is whenever you put the cell phone on the other side, now you have the head in between the cell phone antenna and the cell phone, which means is that my head is absorbing almost all the signal in a way that it cannot reach the phone. So they start having all those problems right now. At the end of the day, from the point of view of a medical doctor, it's terrible that all the energy is being absorbed by one entity. So foliage, trees, for them are devastating versus 4G. Trees, they polarize the signal, but the signal still go through. It's bad for the trees, not exactly for the trees, because we're different biological beings. They protect us, actually. They're good. They're grounded, and they protect us. But at the end of the day, it's not good for them, but it goes through when this one releases more energy in my body. So now imagine, we're starting to get really sick. What are the main causes of problems in this world right now? Cardiovascular problems, which it has an electric point in there. Neurological problems, whether are mental or they're neurological, and immunological problems. So 3 main organs that are activated by electric and magnetic fields from our cells. Let me just say this. I didn't think that I mentioned it this way. the difference between being alive and being functional is the ability that my neurons have to send the right message. In order to send the right message, they need the right amount of voltage.
Mhm.
Talking about my brain, we have some biorhythm cells in the brain. They dictate how much voltage, where they send it, how, through where, etc.
So you're talking about electrical power.
Yeah.
And the brain, I think it's like 80 hertz, isn't it? Something like that.
Well, it depends.
Or is it 40 to 80?
It depends. That is the beauty about the body. That is not the exact same thing. So you can actually use very different variables to give very different messages. That's the beauty about the human body.
Exactly. And this brain power or electrical signal, if we want to liken it to, I mean, we are electric.
Yeah, we're electric.
The body is electric. And if you're not able to produce those signals in your body, then the brain controls everything in the body. And so it's not going to be able to happen.
For parents, I'm going to give an example that is not the best example probably, but it's part of how I learn it. Being a pediatric neurologist, part of my job, it was to check if somebody is brain dead or not. So the neurologist is the only one who can certify if somebody is brain dead or not. So 3 times in my life, I was asked to go to the intensive care unit to diagnose if that is the case. At the end of the day, whatever I do is I take away some medications that can be sedatives, etc. But whatever I have to do is I have to explore every single nerve in the human body to see if I have a response to that. At the end of the day, that is electric responses. The difference between being alive and being dead is electricity. The difference between 100% healthy and have some chronic issues, etc., is the amount of electricity that the perfection of that electricity that we produce.
Right.
When
I get that, the optimal versus I'm just barely surviving. Yes, you can call me alive, but I'm not really doing anything, to being a functioning human being out living a purposeful life, doing what we're supposed to be doing here.
And one thing that I did understand by being a neurologist is that when you have a disturbance in the electric system, there's no pills that I can give you that can restore that. But I can take away the exposure, make the best environment so you can restore, and probably we can overcome that illness that they have. So at the end of the day, I switch a little bit my career, not because I did it because I was convinced that whatever I was doing before, it wasn't exactly the right thing. Using pharmaceuticals as my only tool, it taught me that it is not the right way. I have to go to the root causes of the problems. And if the root causes of the problem is an electric toxin, I need to find it and rid away of that.
Well, you won't hear any argument from us.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we're tying this back into developing brains.
Yeah.
So this effect of absorbing more of this 5G energy, we absorb more of it. So what would this extra exposure of energy do to a brain that that is essentially highly growing during the first year of life? And so those electrical synapses, the communications between the brain, the body, all the nerves are rapid firing. So what would this extra energy be doing to that development? Or is there any exploration of that or knowledge of that right now?
Yeah, there is.
And expand on that, Dr. Ritter, with some of what babies are being exposed to, either in utero or after they come out, some of these exposures. So just to kind of tie all that in.
Yeah. So you were mentioning before baby monitors. Oh, if I measure a baby monitor in front of a mom, she just take it away. It's so loud and devastating when I use the meters. But at the end of the day, you're right. So a newborn is a very fragile human, and it's a human that is not 100% developed. Let's say all the synapses are not 100% there yet. Let me try to say it like that. When is in our lives when we sleep the most? When we're newborns and when we're teenagers. The reason is because we're developing faster. We're growing and developing faster, which means that we're going to have a little bit more wear out of enzymes, etc. At the end of the day, we need more repair. So what happened when all these very fragile neurons try to create new synapses? Well, again, the synapses, this synaptogenesis genesis pattern, which means how they connect to another neurons, it is triggered by our own electric impulses. When you have another, like we were talking about, toxin, given the wrong message, we can have wrong synapses. So that's what the thing that I was seeing with this autism spectrum. Autism is not just one thing. At the end of the day, is a human brain that is not doing exactly what it's supposed to. That is not 100% functional in all the variables that we can expose them to. I'm going to show, and that's what I was saying before, the EEGs. When I show one EEG that is completely normal, you don't need to be a neurologist to see, oh yeah, it's beautiful because there's patterns in there. It's symmetrical. When you see the EEG of one baby that has been exposed to a lot of toxins, of course, my main one is electromagnetic fields, but you see the chaos in there. Chaos that, again, you don't need to be a neurologist to understand that doesn't look good. And at the end of the day, whatever is doing this exposure that you were mentioning is having effects in a lot of different parts of the developing, not just in one. So how do we produce neurotransmitters? Well, it's dictated by those biorhythm cells. How we create these synapses. Those things happen at the same time. And those things happen, these two things can be disturbed at the same time as well. It could be permanent, or it could be just temporary, just dysfunction. At the end of the day, whatever we have to do is we have to try to expose less during the day, during the night, and try to prevail so they can restore the most possible. Again, when a newborn is sleeping, let me go back really quick and say, back in those days, we thought that when we were sleeping, we were just wasting our time. Because right now, we're awake and we're just multitasking. I can move my leg and I can talk and I can think, etc. I'm doing a lot of things. When we're asleep, we only sleep. So we're just wasting our time. No, we were wrong 100%. You're doing a bigger job that you need 100% of your energy focuses on restoration. So when a little baby is sleeping, it's doing an immense task of repairing his DNA, repairing the enzymes that they have. So the environment should be an environment that it doesn't disturb that complex biochemical job that is doing inside of the body. I hope that I explained a little bit.
So from what I understand, when you introduce that much energy into a developing brain, you have the normal synaptic process, aka the actual process of generating neurons, because a developing brain is essentially growing those nerve cells, forming those neurotransmitter connections. But the 5G interferes with that in terms of forming the wrong connections, or maybe not complete connections, or something gets the communication gets distorted. And then the other point that I'm understanding is it has a really, really big effect on sleep, which we do know. And I totally agree with you that sleeping is actually so, so important. Again, and it doesn't, that cellular repair and that repair of DNA and that recuperation of the enzymes in your cells, it's important throughout your whole life. And so my question then would be, because you're really looking at the EEGs, do you notice that the 5G waves have a certain effect on certain brain waves?
Well, let me say one thing. And we still don't have 5G as a 20 to 40 gigahertz broadcast. We still don't have it. Whatever we have is 5 gigahertz on Wi-Fi's. So we still don't have that. Even if you see commercials on TV, and we do have the best 5G, they still don't broadcast at those frequencies yet. And even if you see antennas in there, I've been trying to measure antennas and things like that. And at the end of the day, I haven't found yet these frequencies being broadcast. But at the end of the day, whatever we have measured in the past, and the logical thinking of physics theory will say that, at the end of the day, you will have more radiation creating more disturbances in the body. Now, again, a lot of people are focusing on 5G, but I'm not sure if that is the right thing to tell parents, because they should be worried of the things that we have right now as well. I mean, let's prevent. We know that they are saying, hey, we're going to put a lot of satellites out there broadcasting frequencies to hear. I'm not sure, because there's no way that I can prove it, that they already have 15,000 satellites out there. But we need to prevent if that happens. How am I going to shield a house that has all these new things? That is my job. That is why I need to keep understanding physics, etc., so I can give good responses. But whatever we have today is exposure that is doing the exact same effects that you were describing. Just because one is 4G or 3G, it doesn't mean that, that doesn't matter. No, it does. And it's causing a lot of problems right now. Like I was saying before, I started noticing these things 20 years ago. So imagine 20, and I want to say this before that I mentioned another thing, but 20 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. The reality is that nobody explained me anything. It was just observation with my patients and just a little bit of curiosity. Hey, oh my goodness, whatever my teacher told me, it was wrong, because I'm reading this and going that path. It turns out that since 1957, so this is way before that I was even born, biological effects of electromagnetic radiation was explained perfectly well with equations and graphics, etc., by Dr. Schwann. Let me tell you that once that I started digging very deep, I was already studying physics, etc. I find out a book, a manual that it says biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. And one chapter, it was by Dr. Schwann, dated in 1953, actually, it was. And he described all the questions that I had. Is neuron absorbing radiation? And he shows all the formulas how you can verify that happened. I was very, very upset with all my teachers, my neurology teachers, because how's possible that they're forming me as a neurologist and they forgot to mention these key things? Well, the thing is that they didn't know. And the thing is that they just do whatever everybody else does. Prescribing.
Attribute it to the same way that x-rays were discovered. It's not that x-rays don't have their place, it's the fact that, you know, he discovered this new thing, but his long-term exposures and his multiple exposures ended up killing him. And that's not to say that we can't use x-rays in a safe and effective way, but as you said, we know how to shield people, have less exposure. We know that there shouldn't be certain exposures for certain types of people. And so why would this be any different?
They used to x-ray pregnant women.
I know.
And they used to have x-rays for feet, for shoes.
I know.
Well, and so what I'm taking from your explanation, because I'm hearing so much about 5G and you're saying like, well, we don't actually have it broadcasting yet.
And they haven't they haven't done any studies on 5G, and they don't plan on doing any studies, but there are studies going back. There was actually, I can't remember the name of it, but the big study they did, you probably know what I'm talking about. And of course I don't have it in front of me, but they actually
have like a lot of studies.
It's from the 80s, I think, or 90s, but it was a large study that was even commissioned to be done. And they came up with certain results that now they're just sort of pushing to the side and forgetting that they even talked about this or had this study done.
You know, sadly, we have a lot of things that are doing in the wrong way as well. Again, part of my job is to read every paper. I don't read papers that has a lot of opinions like, oh yeah, electromagnetic radiation causes this.
Right.
Those things are opinions that I'm going to sound really bad, but I'm really not interested in that.
Well, you're prove your opinion.
I'm sorry?
But not only that, Dr. Carlos, but they're doing these studies in mice and animals, and you go, okay,
wherever I'm interested is in studies that shows you one specific thing. Let me just say one. Hydrogen is one atom, right? What happened when we expose one hydrogen to electromagnetic fields? That is important information because that will happen every single time. It's replicable. So if I read those kind of studies and then I ask, hey, how many grams of hydrogen you have in your body? Oh, depends on your weight and depends on your age. Probably you have 70 grams. Then I know what EMFs are doing to the hydrogen that you have. Where do you have more hydrogen, etc. Kind of like that. At the end of the day,
that makes sense.
The studies that I'm interested about is the ones that give you information like that. Opinions, I really don't care because I care about the law of physics. If the law of physics tells me this, then I can use my criteria to know what would happen. If the opinion of one guy is differs from the other one, that is not exactly. I don't care even about my opinion. I care about.
You're also your clinical judgment. When you saw there were issues with the children, and then you said you would do one thing, one remediation. I don't know if you got them to turn off the Wi-Fi or do shielding. And then you see those differences and you go, okay, I may not quite understand yet what's going on, but I can see that this is having a physiologic effect, a biologic effect, a neurologic effect. And especially you said you were dealing with children with epilepsy and autism, and we know there's a neurologic component there. So it just begs to reason that these things are having an effect, and that's where that sort of common sense aspect comes in, and that clinical judgment comes in. That I know that brain because the same thing happens with me. So I want to talk a little bit about those remediation.
Okay.
Actually, first beforehand, what are the biggest? No. Well, this ties into your remediation. It does.
Well, maybe I was going to say it. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, we need you to come in and help us with our houses. And
yeah, don't worry.
like I said, either I want you to come here or train my husband so he can do it.
Perfect.
And then help others out here so you don't have to keep flying back and forth. But, for sure, making our home our safe place. But just some things that people can do right away to try and minimize their exposure, not only for themselves, but their children. And this kind of ties into the bigger thing. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could go down rabbit holes with this, but now people are spending more time on their electronic devices.
Well, that's where I tied in. I actually just wanted to ask Dr. Carlos, what are the most common sources of high EMF that you see children exposed to? So that's where it kind of connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned baby monitors earlier.
Yes.
So what else?
Yeah. Baby monitors are so powerful. And let me tell you one story about one of my clients. So she wasn't actually talking to me. She was talking to my business partner. And my business partner was saying, oh, baby monitors are terrible. And she was saying, you know what? I'm never going to leave the baby monitor because that's how I have sanity, because I know where my kid is. They have the camera baby monitor where they can hear and see the baby. So she was just saying that, and I was just listening. Okay, I didn't say anything. So I brought 1 meter another day when I was with her, and I just turned on the meter with the baby monitor, and the noise, it was terrible. So I told her, unplug the baby monitor, and my meter just went silent. And I said, turn it on again, and the meter was terrible. Turn it off again. So she did it, and then she threw it away. So the thing is that she had to see it, because the benefit that she had before, it was a benefit that she needed, but she didn't know the side effect. So when she saw what it was coming through the meter, she just decided, I didn't have to say anything, throw it away or unplug it. She knew what to do. Kind of like that. The biggest sources sometimes are from outside of the house. And I'm going to say this. Even if I have one antenna, imagine this is not an antenna, but I have a device in here. Okay. Here. So if I have this device and this one is producing radiation, I have it really close to me. But whatever I have to ask is, how much power input and power radiated this have? I'm just going to say a number. Maybe it has 2 watts per square meter. It's a lot. But if I have a cell phone antenna that produces more than 1,000 watts, that one is the most important thing. Of course, it's not right and close to my head. But whatever we have to balance is, whatever I can do inside of my house is easy. If I have a router, I can unplug it at night. Do I really need it at night? If the answer is no, unplug it. If the answer is yes, well, let's try to put it as far away of the people who are sleeping. At the end of the day, the more distance that you can have and the less devices that you can have around your body when you're sleeping. People said, hey, I need my cell phone right here when I sleep because the alarm. Well, do you know that you can put the cell phone in airplane mode and have the alarm on? Or if you really need the cell phone, put it in the bathroom as far away as you can. I don't have a cell phones on in my house. My teenagers, they know perfectly well. So, but if we need to have one, instead of having 5 on at the same time, we only keep 1. And if somebody has to call us, they know that they have to call us to this number. At the end of the day, the least amount of devices that has antennas, the better for the environment of the house. So one thing that I do is I unplug things. Do we really need to have the blender plug in 24 hours a day? No, we don't. Would it kill you to plug it in every time that you're going to use it? No, it won't kill me. So that kind of mentality.
Oh my gosh. I'm so guilty.
Yeah, that kind of mentality. I mean, we didn't talk about dirty electricity, transient response, but every electronic that you plug into the load of the electric system, it will create a disturbance. Dirty electricity. At the end of the day, we divide it in three: low frequencies, dirty electricity, and high frequencies. All those three things at the same time create different biological effects. And if I have 2,000 microvolts per square meter of high frequencies, and I can do something, unplug things, turn off devices to lower the exposure from 2,000 to 600, that's a gain for us. Now, of course, if I try to protect my babies, and I do, I mean, I'm really crazy about my kids. And let me say one thing. Some friend of my kids, friends, they invite my kids to go to sleepovers, right? So, especially my daughter. So I talk to the parents. Hey, I'm this crazy guy. Can I measure your house? And every time that Isabella is my daughter, comes here, can we do this and this and this?
Can I paint the bedroom?
Yeah. So I make a lot of friends like that, but they start understanding. They see the care that I have for my kids. Of course, my kids are my life, and all my knowledge is to protect my babies, right? So whatever I can do to expose less the bodies of my kids, I'll do it. and
so I'm hearing unplug as much as you can.
Yes.
Turn your devices off or put them in airplane mode. I even go one step further. I don't know how you feel about these things. Let me see if I do have it. I'm making noise.
Yeah.
This is a Faraday bag.
Yeah. I mean,
my phone, and I have one for my laptop.
I use one. Things, the details vary a lot. The details are very important. In the past, we have those pouches with silver fabric, but now cell phones are extremely more powerful than before. So not necessarily all the pouches are helpful.
That's right. I did my research. I did my due diligence, so I can let
perfect.
What I got.
New devices are being developed now. And the new one that is coming, I'm not sure exactly when it's coming. I was asked to review the physics behind some. It's some sheets that it can reflect and absorb radiation at the same time. So one thing that they probably are going to have, I don't know if I should say it right now, but you put your cell phone close to the window, and you put the cell phone in between the sheet, and I'm not explaining it right. So you put the sheet in between your house or the space that you want to protect close to the window, and the radiation from the cell phone is getting out of the window, not inside. You can hear the cell phone if it's ringing, but the radiation is not leaking inside of the house.
Yeah, it makes
things
sense.
like that. At the end of the day, new technology to shield things is being developed right now.
I have a question for you. I heard about a technology. I can't remember where I heard it, probably during the 5G summit. As you were talking about waves, so you have the EMF waves, right? That there's a technology that can kind of cancel out those waves. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Familiar? Do you know anything about that?
Oh yeah, I do. I really don't like to talk bad about anything, but I don't like those ones.
Can you explain why?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, whatever they do is they trick the meter. Remember what I was saying about
Right.
the waves canceling each other?
Right.
The only way that we can measure still is with meters. So I can show you, hey, before that I plug in this, radiation was 10. Now I plug it in and my meter says 3. Wait a second. It doesn't mean that we don't have radiation. Whatever it means, it is canceling each other in a way that my meter cannot read it. Canceling each other for the meter, not for my body, because now I have the exposure of both at the, you know?
Well, this is what I was asking you, because it sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
But like you said, sure, it is canceling it out for the meter.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we want. We want to cancel out for our body.
That's right. I'm trying to invite everybody that is around this area. Why don't we do it in the right way? And again, physics is the right way. I know that not everybody is going to go through med school and then physics, but
I went through chiropractic college, and I'll leave all the physics to you. Definitely not my forte.
But you know, at the end of the day, whatever we can do is we can partner. I went through that, and I do know a few things about physics. I'm trying to put more physicists together so we can actually teach. You don't have to go through physics, but I can tell you this is what you need to know about physics so you can make sense in your practice. So bring it digested to everybody. But at the end of the day, we really have to remember physics is the one thing that dictates how things are done, because that's the law, the rule 6. So
a couple of other things really that became evident to me as I really have started to open up my awareness to EMFs in general are that I didn't put 2 and 2 together with things like cordless phones.
Yeah.
Wireless keyboards.
Yeah.
Bluetooth devices.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because after you learn it, you go, duh, but
I know. Yeah. So this obsession that we have to have everything wireless is not the best for humans. I have to say it like that. We have zero tolerance to radiation. But the more and more and more exposure that we have, the worse for us. So, and another thing that I do every time that I go measure houses, and I hope that nobody takes it in the wrong way. So they have these earbuds that are wireless. AirPods. I don't remember the name.
Exactly. Yeah, AirPods.
Yeah. So whatever I do is they are in a case, and I tell them close the case. And I get my meter. Open the case, and the meter goes nuts. Again, until they see it, and they hear the terrible noise mimicking the radiation coming from there, is when they understand, oh, yeah. So the reason why they don't have a cable is because it's broadcasting a signal, and it gets the information from one place to another. Yeah. So yeah, this obsession that we have that everything has to be wireless is something that we have to break, especially if you have kids in your house. If you have kids in your house, the commodity of having wireless thing is not the best for your kids. Why don't we plan before? Hey, where the TV is going to be? The TV is going to be there. Well, let's make everything possible so we don't have ugly cables, but we have all the communication, the right wiring, so you can have it, so you don't get deprived of technology, but you don't expose your family as much.
Absolutely. And I found out as my husband is actually doing wiring for houses.
Okay.
He hardwires their house. They don't even know it until they mentioned they want to hardwire because of this issue. And he's like, yeah, I already did that.
It's already there.
So, so he's already created that situation.
Perfect.
Do you have any suggestions for people who don't own their own home?
Yeah.
And they want to hardwire, but obviously they're not going to want to go through that expense, or they can't, what they can do.
So whatever I did before I got all crazy in my house is I did run wires around the walls. So I guess that whenever you don't own a house, you don't want to make holes everywhere. But if you put them around in the corners of the in the walls, and cover with the plywood that you paint exactly the same color of the wall, you don't see those cables. You know what I'm trying to say? At the end of the day, I was trying to get creative in a way that we're going to have the cables and we don't want to see all the ugliness of that. So painting boards and things like that, it was the way to hire it. Putting underneath the carpet. So, and we have a little bump in the carpet. But at the end of the day, if you're going to move out of that house, you don't need to make holes in there. So hardwiring is one of the things. Measuring is very important because let me tell you, behind me, I do have a bed canopy against EMFs. But this bed canopy is not that strong if it's the only layer that I have of protection. It's dangerous if I have a lot of pulses and they get trapped. Luckily in my house, my walls are shielded. I have 2 layers of protection, my walls and my canopy, because I do want to sleep with 0 radiation. It's impossible 0, but 8, let's say like that. Because I do value the health of my family, I do invest in things like that. Now, if you don't own the house, the best thing is to know exactly what is the situation. I have this experience, and it happened more times than not. I measured the house, and they have in mind, you know what? I'm going to build my own house anyways, so I'm going to build it right now, sooner than later, or I'm going to move out of this area. Measuring the house is the one thing that gives us the opportunity to take decisions. Am I going to rent this house for more than 10 years? Maybe I do want to shield the house.
Right.
If I'm going to rent it for 3 more months.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, all those situations definitely have to be in play for sure.
Yeah.
Any last words for your best advice for parents out there? Either they're thinking of having a child, or they're pregnant, or they have a newborn or a very young baby.
Yeah.
Any advice for how we can live safely with this technology? We know that we should be getting someone, you preferably, because I mean, there is no, here's the problem. There's no certification.
Yeah.
Somebody coming in, looking at your home for potential issues.
Yeah.
The problem is that they don't have a medical degree like you do. They haven't gotten training in physics like you have. So how do we?
I'm trying to put protocols so we can follow. Believe me, that we're working really hard to do that.
We
to
need
multiply those protocols. But it's been hard. And with this pandemic, everything went south. So
this is the time now, actually, for people.
Yeah.
They are at home. They really do need this.
Yeah, to learn.
But given all that, given the fact that we know that people should be checking what's in their home, number one. Number two, they should be having you come out and remediate for someone that you train.
If you need to contact their scrolling below on how to contact them.
Yeah.
And we'll put that in the notes as well. Yes. So we know that we have to worry about what's outside as well. But like I said, any other things that people can help not to minimize their exposure for things that they can do like today?
I guess the first advice that I want to give parents is, first off, don't be scared of this in a way that you get paralyzed. Be aware so you can take decisions. Don't be scared, because being scared is going to lead you to two things. One, you're not going to want it to know, and that is not the right thing. Or two, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to get mad to this subject. There's people that, oh, that actually doesn't happen, etc.
Or just I give up. It's going to be, I give up. Yeah.
So don't be scared. But remember that most of the parents, we're the ones that take care of the health of our kids. And we wanted to provide, as showing the love that we have for our families, we want the best for them. Learn about this subject. We don't live in 1700s when electricity didn't exist. We live in 2020 when we have a lot of wireless technology, a lot of cell phones, and a lot of electricity. So that is the reality where we live. It does have an effect in humans, but try to learn as much as possible as parent and try to teach. It took me a while, but let me say one thing that I did. My wife, we were used to, before that I knew this, we were used to use the microwave oven. And that's how we heat things. One day I want to talk about how microwave oven actually heat things. It's very interesting that. But once that I started being aware, kind of scared, I told my wife. And of course she forgets, right? And she was like, yeah, whatever. So I put a sign inside of the microwave oven, and I put in there, don't use me, radiation. And every time that she was opening, oh yeah, that's right. We learned how to cook again with gas, with propane, natural gas, and we do it really fast, etc. Mm-hmm. But we start changing our lives, knowing exactly where was the dangers of all these new technology devices, etc. This new era. At the end of the day, little by little, they need to get the power to control whatever our kids have, etc. Like I was saying, my kids are teenagers. They do want Snapchat or all those apps. Whatever I did is I put cables and I bought these adapters. So use it as much as you want with the cable. Mm-hmm. I know that you're not getting radiated and you're happy because you're talking to your friends. Mm-hmm. So there's ways to go around to have the technology that we want in a safer way. So that would be my first advice to parents. Don't be afraid to learn this new thing. Could be overwhelmed, but you're the only one. Unfortunately, nobody else is going to take care of the exposure of your family.
No, absolutely. We're the gatekeepers from what we bring in.
Yes.
And it's worth the effort. It's worth the time. It's worth the energy, because this isn't going away.
Yeah.
And
it's getting worse.
More likely than not going to get worse. And so, it is definitely a thing. And that's why we're here, because this is actual factual information. It's not conjecture. It's not supposition. It's about real information to make real decisions.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add, Dr. Toxil?
Well, aside from the fact that we definitely have to have you back on in the future to talk.
Thank you so much.
Well, and especially as more and more things are changing. I mean, technology is rapid fire at this point. Our tomorrow might look very different from what is happening today. That's how fast it's going, but at the same time, it's good to have the thing that I appreciate about you is that you're actually looking at the physics of it, the actual laws, because although I'm not good at physics, I do follow the rule of physics where I'm like, you need to be able to prove it through this in order for me to have faith in this.
Yeah.
So I understand how to read it. I just cannot do a quick like you can, and I'm not going to.
It took me a while to do it.
Right. But, so having people like you, and then hopefully in the future, more and more people are going to be interested in training under you, because, just like we have moderators with all these other things, and, I'll just mention there are agencies in place to look and monitor things like food or what we put in our bodies, like the FDA. There needs to be some sort of understanding that these are things that are going through our body. They should be looked at and make sure that they're safe, and such as with the metering with you. So, but that isn't being done, and that is not being done every time a tower goes up. So hopefully, with your help, more and more people will become aware of this. And in the future, there might be a committee going like, this needs to be put up in this area unless all of these houses are checked and then have this, and this.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well,
I guess that if, again, you invite me again, the next time I would love to show those EEGs. Like I was saying, you don't need to be a neurologist to compare an EEG that is normal to an EEG that is chaotic from this electromagnetic radiation.
Right.
And the things that I have is I follow my patients, so I can show before shielding, after shielding. And that's what I want the parents to see.
love that too.
We'll definitely set that up.
All right.
Well,
perfect.
Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation.
Yes.
I have learned so much.
And thank you to everybody that did come to the live. Did see some viewers popping in and out. So we want to thank you so much for tuning into this really important one. This will be also reposted. So even anybody who did miss the live, they will be able to see this and gain knowledge and wisdom from you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we'll definitely be, if people want to contact you, it's emfknights.net. All right.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.